Welcome to the Heroes of Cosplay Sanctuary. This is your host, Scotty B. Friends, it is the most expensive hobby ever, besides maybe horses, but really it's a very expensive hobby. We'll call it cosplay because it's so expensive. You will spend ridiculous amount of money on everything that you need in order to create a cosplay. And there are people who argue that it isn't, but it's either going to consume your time or it's going to consume your resources, or some combination of both. Of course, you can write it off if it's a business expense, but it is in every single way completely and utterly expensive to be a cosplayer. I can go into many details about why it is so expensive to be a cosplayer, from purchasing any of the things you need for an individual cosplay to tailoring them and all of the equipment that goes into that, to 3D printing, sewing, foaming, any of that, all of the raw materials that you need to buy. And that is just the cosplay. Now you're going to need software for video editing. You're going to need equipment for creating videos, or you're going to have to go find somebody who does that, and that's expensive. You have to go find a genre, or you have to find a location. You have to pay the fees in order to be at that location. There could be some, or you at least have to get permission, which is your time, and it could be a fee. Then you have to make sure that you're insured in some cases. There's a lot of legality that goes into it, so you have to make sure that's in place. There could be some tax liability because you might be making money on some of these things. There's all of the posting. You have to figure out what's going to manage your social media, or if you're going to do that, you're going to have to boost posts, and that's going to cost money. There are going to be all of the things you need in order to do any of your own photo editing, unless you're sending that out, which again is another fee. And of course, photographers cost money too. Never mind how much it costs to go to a convention itself, which is, something that is really down at the bottom of the list as far as all the things that I've just mentioned to you. But wow, when you add all of that up, it really, really gets expensive. And now you're just going to do it in perpetuity. So you're talking tens of thousands of dollars in some cases to be a cosplayer. That is crazy amounts of money. Anybody who says that organic reach is the only way to go because it's free is, I don't know where they came up with that, but seriously, boosted posts are probably the least expensive thing that you're going to spend your money on in cosplay. Go ahead and boost the posts. It's what the algorithm wants. Paying for that blue check mark, it's what the algorithm wants. I don't really have an opinion about that. I don't have one right now, but hey, maybe I'll get one because I think it works on Threads too. Just saying, you don't have to get one for Twitter. And Twitter doesn't have an Instagram right now. There's no Insta Twitter. So if they come up with a photo and video sharing platform, it'll be kind of funny, but I don't think that there's any cause to do that right now. So why don't we spend a little bit of time talking about cosplay economics, if there is even such a thing. I'm not sure that there is. But anyways, you buy the followers, you buy the cosplay, something costs something. You get out what you put in, and it is hard to scale. Everything in cosplay is very difficult to scale. It's very difficult to get a return on your investment out of what you put in, because you have to build and build and build to an enormous following before you really see any return on that, before you can leverage those people. Thank you, people. Leverage the people that follow you so that you can be considered an influencer, and that you can be given money by other marketing firms and advertising firms that work alongside of larger organizations. And there are many, and marketing is very expensive. And now you're selling out to different products or services, and different people who want to take advantage of and use cosplayers as influencers in order to sell their product, which is fine, but it is an economy. It is something that you are now contributing to and building for an organization, which, fine, if that's your end goal, that's great, but it takes a lot of posts and a lot of time and a lot of energy that you probably end up spending just as much time doing that as you would in a full-time job. And it could be a lot more difficult depending on who you're working with, and depending on that sort of fickle nature of advertising and marketing. It's here today and it's not there tomorrow. That is just how it works. Generally, campaigns have a shelf life, just like cosplays, and there is a lot that goes into the thought process and who gets selected and who's in and who's out. And yes, it's a little easier than auditioning, especially now, a little easier than auditioning for a movie or being an extra in a movie or something like that, or getting into the film industry in general. It's a little easier to be an influencer and just get reached out to by 1.5 million companies that are looking for people. But there's a lot of work involved with that. It is very much you're on display. It is very much what you do is going to set the stage for what you do in the future. And then there's a lot that goes into everything with that in terms of budgeting, in terms of what you really got out of it, in terms of exhausting yourself, in terms of the hours that you have to keep, the content that you now have to put out because you're obligated. It's no longer fun for you. It's a job. So if it's not making you happy, if there's no ROI that leads you to happiness, the return isn't happiness, then what on earth are you doing it for? It's the hardest way on earth to make money. Trying to get anybody interested in you online is a very difficult way to make money. I wanted to spend the last part of this video just going over a very straightforward approach that I know about making this work, because the last thing that you want to do with a hobby and the last thing that you want to do with cosplay is go into debt or not be able to pay your bills because you spend too much on your cosplay. The rule that I use is once you've built up your emergency cash reserve, and I hope that you will go and find the resources online to do this, to say, here's my emergency reserve, this I don't touch unless something bad happens, because there are families involved. There are things that happen, like we are adults, we have obligations. So that should come first, but really that you should fit your cosplay into a very small and narrow budget where you have a 75, 10, 15 approach to how you divide up your money. Okay. And this, I will say, works very well. I'd say it works. There's a few rules that I have in place. One rule is that if you are investing in yourself or you're investing towards savings, that it is either 10 or 15% of your total check, your paycheck, your 2-week, whatever you get, you only allocate as much as 15% of that after everything else has been paid. So you've got your 75% that pays all your bills, and you've got 25% left over. And what you do with that, it goes into your hobbies and interests. And it's either 10% or 15%, depends on what you're going to actually save from each check, but that you're not going to debt on your cosplays. Another thing to think about is if you can't afford 4, don't buy 1. If you couldn't buy 4 cosplays, don't get a cosplay. So if you don't have all the money for 4 of them, don't get 1 of them. So that is generally a rule of thumb, because if you're too thin and you're too short, you're always going to be dipping in somewhere. You're always going to be right on the verge of borrowing more. And it's not really that important to feed a hobby that way. You should feed yourself, not the hobby. So it's really just wants versus needs. And that's the last point I'm going to make on this episode. And talking about the cost of cosplay is cosplay generally fits into a category of want. There's no such thing as a need for cosplay. Cosplay is a hobby. Cosplay is something that you enjoy doing in your life, but it is not something you need. It's not food. It's not shelter. It's not clothing. It's not things you need. It's not for your family needs. It's just a want. It's a hobby. It's something you pursue. So if you're going too heavy into it, think about it and think about prioritizing differently, because it's not important to get the endorsements. It's not important to make it the only thing. Only if it is your job, it is your livelihood. But even at that, you're going to have bills to pay. You can't just put everything back in to trying to gain more followers and reach. You have to have something for yourself first, and then put more into your cosplay. So that's all I have to say about the cost of cosplay today, folks. Thanks again for being here. All of the things are in the description below. You can like, you can comment, you can subscribe. You can do all the things to make sure that you see the next video, which we are trying to bring one out every week right now. Of course, we've got the guest episodes at the end of the week. Very excited about everything that's going to be going on with the show from this point forward, friends. This is Scotty B with the Hero Cosplay Sanctuary saying bye-bye.